Let's talk about DBQs, private medical evidence, nexus letters, and those things. It's a hot topic that obviously many veterans in some shape, fashion, or form are dealing with these things. So let's go ahead and get at it. Looking specifically at this, right? We're over at the VA site. This is where all the DBQs are at. This is where you can find a DBQ to take to your doctor. Again, some folks may charge for it, so you may go to your own doctor if you choose to do this. But here, for example, is a migraine headache DBQ that you can take to your provider, have them fill it out, and the VA has to evaluate it. So let's actually get down to the real emphasis of this, which is over at the CFR. We are at Title 38, Chapter 1, Part 4, Subpart A at 4.6. Specifically, we're looking at evaluation of evidence, right? And I think this is a key one. I highlighted some key points here. And the first part is many veterans are thinking, well, it's not in my service record, so I have nothing to argue, or I didn't get copies, etc., or I didn't complain. Got it. But look at the very first part here. I'll zoom in just a little bit so folks can actually see what we're looking at. The element of weight to be accorded to the character of a veteran's service is but one factor in entering into consideration of the rating boards in arriving at a determination of the evaluation of a disability, aka your service and stuff. That's one part of it. The next part is the part that I really want to focus on. Every element in any way affecting the probative value to be assigned to the evidence in each individual claim must be thoroughly and conscientiously studied by each member of the rating board in light of the established policies of the VA, and to that end, the decision will be equitable and just as contemplated by the requirements of law. AKA, if you're introducing evidence, they have to evaluate it, right? That's the CFR. Now let's jump over to the M21-1. This is what the VA itself is using as their tool to be able to come to these decisions, right? So we're looking here, M21-1, 4, subpart I, Chapter 3, Section A, general criteria for sufficiency of examination reports. And we're looking at here specifically D, L, and E, right? Delta and Echo. So reviewing DBQs. The healthcare provider, right, must meet specialty requirements for the examination conducted, right, which includes your own provider. If the DBQ is sufficient for rating purposes, right? So they're going to review it if these things are in place. Now, the E part is the one that I really want to focus on, which is if the evidentiary record contains a privately completed DBQ, right? We're going to highlight it here. Generally, claim processors must consider the authenticity of the information reported as described, bearing in mind that it should be generally accepted at face value unless there's a reason to question or doubt it. Evaluate it under the evidentiary principles discussed in the M21-1 and go forward and do that thing. Now, this is where it gets hairy with some providers, right? Using the table below here to determine the actions that must be taken, right? Completed by a private provider, non-VA provider, and deemed insufficient for rating purposes for the reasons described in the table. All that means is this. Make sure that they're filling out everything, because they may just do a few things, sign here because you asked them to do that, and that may not be enough, right? Because we're looking at things like, for example, if the DBQ is missing information or contains blank or contradictory values in fields that are relevant to the rating activity, right, then they have to attempt to contact the certifying provider, document any successful effort by phone that they have done. If the provider cannot be reached by telephone, document any unsuccessful attempts, times, etc. If it's completed by a non-VA provider whose records the veteran has requested to be considered in connection with XYZ, ensure all necessary developmental efforts to secure relevant private medical care and evidence. If it requires additional examination components such as review of service treatment records, performance of specific confirmatory or laboratory testing, etc., as the examiner to perform only those missing requirements, right? So they still may actually do some things. Like let's say, provider did one for asthma, right? But they want me to have a current asthma pulmonary function test. They can still request that, right? And use what my provider provided. I say this to say that this is a variety of different ways that this can be used. But if you're having your provider fill out documentation for you, it's cute that we can go and say, hey, I'm going to pull down a DBQ from the VA website. That's fine, but they have to know what they're filling out. It has to be filled out correctly, because if not, right, you're not doing yourself any favors. Or if you're paying someone to do this, review it and make sure all pertinent things are filled out and be able to ask questions. If they can't answer the question about why this is not filled out or why is this filled out this way, do they really know what they're doing, or are they just going off of templates? When it comes to private evidence and so forth, it matters. It has to be weighed. We just saw how. Hope that helps. You have questions? We'll see you in the comments.